Since Arkansas has a constitutionally mandated balanced state budget, but our state's federal debt is not included in our budget, and at this time I understand it's $300 million that we owe the federal government that's not in this budget. Can this be mandated to be part of our state's balanced budget in the Act? You understand the question?
Can I see that question, Brett?
Our state has a constitutionally mandated balanced budget, right? But we have a $300 million federal debt that is not included in that.
Right.
Why is it not included, and what do we have to do to make it part of our act that requires a balanced budget, all included in there?
The question is, why is $300 million we owe to the federal government not umbrellaed under the constitutional amendment to prevent deficit spending?
Right.
I have no earthly idea. It should be. And there's a Democrat senator from down in Nashville, Larry P., who raised this very issue in joint budget a few months ago. And boy, you would have thought he'd let out a box of snakes. I mean, room left, and everybody shut up. And it's a dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about. But we owe the federal government $300 million for unemployment benefits, and I think it's a clear violation of our constitutional amendment that prevents deficit spending and borrowing. And I think we ought to, next session, now what they say is, well, it's a short term, which is it's budget numbers, we'll adjust here and there, and next year you'll never know that we ever owe them anything. But debt's debt. Credit card, even if you pay it off every month, it's debt for the 30 days that you have activity on that card. And I don't care if this is a short-term debt, it's still debt, and we're not allowed under the Constitution to go into debt, at least not deficit spending. We do bonds, so we can't go into debt. So I think it's a real problem, and I think you need aggressive legislators on joint budget who will hold people's feet to the fire and get an answer, and then I think I mean, if somebody, and I'm not advocating this, but if somebody wanted to file a lawsuit, I think it'd be right, and it's probably a pretty meritorious lawsuit.
I think that extra spending has something to do with the budget process and the way the Revenue Stabilization Act works and the way that we don't have to take into account that priority. And I think, obviously the fundamental problem is the growth of the federal government. And that's something that, we all deal with as state legislators every day, the way that the federal government is working to drive policies that should be decided at the state level. The only really intelligible thing I can say about that generally is that we have to work to make sure that states and state policymakers and local people and local policymakers are allowed to decide their own destiny. And I can tell you, I've worked in order to block the incredible malign influence that this new federal health reform is placing on us. I've worked to block the kind of horrible hobbling that our unemployment obligations are placing on us. We have a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. who think that they are our masters and who think that the states are basically just administrative units, just local offices of the federal government. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before. You have to have a kind of cultural change where people are less sympathetic to government getting involved in every corner of our life, and people are less sympathetic to the federal government making all our decisions from Washington. I doubt that Jeremy disagrees with that. I mean, that's kind of a commonplace, and I'd like to think that it's Tea Party ideas and the Tea Party spirit that's going to eventually move on outside this room, outside this state, eventually going to send representatives to Washington and the state government and local government that's going to make sure that we have our priorities in place and believe not in control from Washington, but in self-determination. Thanks.